Inravio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson, and you're watching the 5 on Racing Show. Welcome. Welcome to a Monday night of race talk and some results and all kinds of good things. Back from a 8-day trip of R&R with good people. It was fun. Can't wait to go back. I didn't want to leave, but I knew I had to do this show, and it was going to be hard to do from way down under. So here we are back again. Not too much in the top three of racing in the Cup, the Xfinity and the Camping World Truck Series. We'll talk about that a little later. But Indy held its qualifying, and Scott Dixon, he took the pole for the Indianapolis 500, which will be held on Memorial Day, which is next Monday. But you know what happens to the guy that wins the pole? Scott Dixon and his buddy Dario Franchitti were robbed at gunpoint at a local Taco Bell 10 minutes from the Indianapolis Speedway. He just won the pole for the 101st running of the Indianapolis 500, and former 500 winner Franchitti was also with him at the time, as was Dixon's wife. Two kids, ages 14 and 15, were captured by the police later on and arrested. How do you get robbed at a Taco Bell drive-up? I don't understand that. But it happened. Everybody's good. The guys are arrested. It should be a good race Memorial Day. But like I said, the 101st running of the Indianapolis 500. With the first one being run, I believe it was in 1917. And people can say, do the math, Joe. It should be, no. 1917 was the first one. You do the math, and it's 101. I had this discussion once before with my good friend WJ, when we talked about zero was the first year of a decade or the last. But something that we joked about back and forth. And speaking of Indianapolis, an IndyCar driver, Sebastian Brodeur, was diagnosed with multiple fractures to his pelvis and right hip due to a horrific practice crash. Qualified for the 500. You know, I always looked at these cars, and there's really not a lot around them. And I was up at, I'm trying to think, I believe it was Bethel Motor Speedway up upstate New York. And I had noticed they had an Indy car that ran in the late 60s. And I looked at this thing, and I'm like, I never saw an Indy car up close, I should say. And I'm looking at this thing, you're basically just sliding into this thing. It's like a cocoon, and you're wrapped, there's stuff all around you. But in a horrific wreck, what's going to happen in a wreck? I mean, I sat there and looked at those cars, and they've become more sleeker and more missile type, in my opinion, than they were 40, 50 years ago. And you know, the wheels are just hanging out there. You don't bump anything. You bump, the parts are going to come flying off. So to see a wreck like this, you know, and I watched a video of it. I was like, wow, the guy's not with us anymore. That's what went through my head when I saw a replay of the wreck. And he didn't walk away, but after some surgery and rehab, he'll be fine. So prayers go out to Sebastian Brodeur for a quick recovery. And glad they found those guys who robbed the Dixon and Franchitti. Like they found the guy that robbed me about a month or so ago. So it's just, I just can't understand how that can happen. A drive to a restaurant and you get robbed at gunpoint. I can't imagine. And you know there's cameras in these fast food restaurants, whether it's Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, whatever it might be. There's cameras there, not only to watch the employees, but to keep track of what's going on. So I'm sure they were an easy find. Because with today's facial recognition, man, if your picture's been taken anywhere and published somewhere or put out there on the social media or anywhere on the internet, you're going to be found. So just one of those things. Just one of those things. And speaking of one of those things, the 2018 Sprint Cup schedule, although not released yet, it's due to be released in the next week or two. There's some changes, and some of the changes that we've been privy to or are privy to is this. As we all knew, a second Cup race will be held at Las Vegas, taken away from New Hampshire. Indy will be race 26. We're making it the last race before the playoffs, as they call them. And Richmond will get a playoff date, which puts a shorter track on the playoff schedule. Chicagoland Speedway will not be a playoff event in 2018. Also, there's rumor, and until that rumor is confirmed, there will be new venues in the 2018 Sprint Cup Series schedule when that comes out in the next couple of weeks. And that'll be interesting to see a new venue. Where are they going to go? I know there's talks about Indy being a road race, and I also heard some rumblings, and I'm really not going to say until it comes out, but some other shorter track venues as well. NASCAR is listening to the fans, and even though they still have to answer the TV and the marketing people and the sponsors who sponsor these televised events, they realize there's a problem with the product. And the product is their show. And what's happening is a lot of people aren't going. Yeah, Talladega was jam-packed. But you look at some of these other venues, the mile-and-a-half racetracks, they're not packed. And part of that reason, in my opinion, is racing has become so saturated on TV that people are saying, you know what, I'm going to see more on television. I remember the first time I went to the Poconos Raceway in Pennsylvania, and I went to this race, and I watched from pit road. I had friends that were working for Johnny Benson, who was part of Roush Racing at the time. And I got to sit actually on the pit box. And it's like a 50-second lap. And from my vantage point, and I can only see here, because you can only go so far this way and that way, every 40, 50 seconds, a bunch of cars pass, and then a bunch of cars passed, and repeated this 200 times. And I said at the time, I says, I see more on TV. And everybody laughed and nodded, but see, I wasn't into it. I wasn't part of the crew. I wasn't, Johnny Benson wasn't my, favorite driver. He was a good driver and with a good team, but I didn't follow him. So I wasn't as excited, being in the pit area and sitting on the pit box as I would have been if I was with, an Earnhardt or car or something to that nature. So it was kind of different. And I understood now why friends of mine said that they'd go to all the qualifying, they go to all the parties and all the pre-race stuff, and they go back to the hotel and watch the race. And I was like, why would you do that? And I understood why. So you have to make these races more exciting. You have to give the fans something. Ernie Saxon in Area Auto Racing News, in his column recently, he said, are the races too long? You're sitting there for 4, sometimes 5 hours, just watching it go. Segment racing has changed things, but has it really changed things? You're still sitting there for the same length of time. Yeah, it gets a little exciting, the 10 laps before each segment, and it gets a little more exciting deeper into the event. But when you look at 4 hours, 5 hours like a Bristol or a Martinsville, 5 hours on a half-mile racetrack, is that maybe a bit too much? And you go back to the old time guys. Those races took a lot longer because they weren't doing the speeds we are today. Yeah, back in the Bill Elliott days, going 212 miles an hour, no restrictor plate. But back then too, when there were crashes, the cleanups were longer. They didn't have the jet dryers. They didn't have that big machine that blows the water off the racetrack. It took longer to clean up a wreck than it does, I should say, now. So it should be interesting where the 2018 schedule with the Sprint Cup Series goes. And what's the follow is the Xfinity then does some things that are going to change too, as well as the Camping World Truck Series. And when you look at that, when you look at NASCAR's staff, the officials, and I know when I worked for NASCAR, when we went to an event, when we went to Bristol, you were there for everything. You might not have been given an assignment that puts you in the limelight per se, but you were there to do a job for all the series. All they did was, for TV, is change your shirt. If it was a Camping World Truck Series event that you were involved with, you put on that shirt. And I know when I was working the pit road in the Cup Series, in the Truck Series, I had to change my pit road uniform, fire suit as most people call it, because I could have been and was on TV. And I couldn't have a Whelen modified pit road uniform on. I had to have the Camping World Truck Series. And I got away with the bottoms. I always wore a two-piece. I got away with the bottoms because the Whelen thing was like, really this, that small. And NASCAR was on Blames, on the side. So, for TV, and I remember saying that to somebody. I said, we're going to need shirts and fire suits for TV. And my higher-ups on the modified series, this was kind of their first time doing this kind of stuff. And they looked at me and, no, you don't. I said, look, I've done it before. Whoever you're sending over to work pit road has to get their stuff from the Camping World Truck Series guy. And sure enough, we did. And, looking back on that, we didn't have the top runners, of course. We had the back of the pack, so to speak, or lower in the points, had less of an impact on the points if we were to make a mistake. And not that we're going to make a mistake. We know how to work pit road. The rules are the same, whether it's a modified or an Xfinity car or a truck or a Cup Series car. There's just so many pit stalls you could drive through, so many men over the wall, when you can go over the wall. And this is back in the day when the pit road officials were on pit road and not calling the shots from a trailer outside the racetrack. So, like I said, it should be interesting. And it should be interesting to see where we go with this moving forward. Continuous change is good sometimes. And that was another thing that Ernie Saxton had shared with, he had his readers write in, and they said what has happened is sometimes these rule changes are just kind of ridiculous. And let's talk about that in a minute, because, I always said when I was doing tech and when I was involved with short track racing as a head official, I always said when people complained about, car zero, let's say, and I'd look and say, it's not a competitive advantage, and it's not a safety issue. Listen, the rules don't address that. They will in a couple of weeks. Use it for now, make it disappear in 2 weeks. And that's what we would do. If it was a big competitive advantage, yeah, okay, so you know what? Add some weight, add 200 pounds, add 300 pounds, depending on what it was. Make that disappear, things of that nature. I can remember tech and cars in the modified series, and Bob Garbarino, who owned the Mystic Missile, and which was involved with modified racing for over 50 years. Every once in a while he'd push the envelope, and that was his job to do. My job was to seal it. And I learned from my short track weekly racing series days moving up is don't embarrass anybody. So I would just say to his crew chief or to him directly, hey, Bob, I see you got such and such. I'm going to go look at the car next to you. When I'm done, I'll come back. and he would change it or fix it or move it or something to that effect. And that was their job to do, get it past me. Get it past me. Even New Smyrna for the World Series of Asphalt Auto Racing one winter. I can remember sitting in the office with Dick Brooks. He was the race director for the event for the week. And and I'll use the names. Teddy Christopher came in, ranting and raving, because he finished second to who I believe was at the time Jimmy Blewett. And it was one of the races, and he come in ranting and raving, and he's saying, "You guys got to check him, he's cheating." And he just kept throwing that cheating word out. So Brooksy says, "Daddy, how do you know he's cheating?" He goes, "Because I'm cheating and he's faster than me." And all of a sudden he realized what he said. We all got a good laugh out of it, and everybody had to make their cheating stuff disappear. So when you look back on times like that, you laugh, And we laughed after he left the office, but we couldn't laugh at him or with him. But anyway, we're going to take a break, and we come back. We're going to talk about, I know it was a couple weeks ago, Kansas, the race at Kansas, and Eric Almirola and his horrific crash and what's going on with him when we come back.
Village Music Shop of Mastic, 1-800-HEY-DUDE, your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
Hey, welcome back. So here I am, packing, getting ready to go away on this big trip, and I'm watching the Sprint Cup Series race. I should go, wow, forgive me, the Monster Energy Drink NASCAR series. And I'm a Richard Petty fan, there's no secret, everybody knows that. So of course I root for whoever drives his car. And he's doing a nice job. He's on most of the race, and all of a sudden Joey Logano and Danica Patrick get into it. Just one of those things. It was a brake rotor broke on Logano's car, and he just kind of did that into Danica's wall. And a lot of fluid and stuff was on the racetrack, and Eric Almirola had nowhere to go. He hits the brakes, and wow, we got a big wreck. And I think I have a picture of the car in the air. And watching Eric Almirola go up like that, and going to see the car come down, I'm like, that's going to hurt. And it did hurt. Not only was the roof cut off of the car to get him out, but the roll cage was cut as well to get him out of that car. Eric Almirola, who was injured in that 3-car wreck at Kansas 2 weeks ago. Almirola was 43, hit both Danica Patrick and Joey Logano, and it caused a long red to get him out. Almirola immediately dropped the window net, took the steering wheel off, but he was hurt. And during the week, I had caught some footage of his radio transmission, and he was in a lot of pain. Almirola broke T5. It's a T5 fracture of his back, which is painful. And he will be out 8 to 12 weeks with that injury, 8 to 12 weeks. And Regan Smith will drive the 43 this weekend at the 600 at Charlotte. Now, this leads me to talk about safety. Now, NASCAR is very, very safety conscious, very safety conscious. And they've improved these cars over the years to make them indestructible in the driver's cocoon area. And I watched Denny Hamlin hit the wall. His car did the same thing. The back end came down. I myself, over 20 years ago, hit the wall. The car went and came down. I had fracture of the coccyx, which is your tailbone. Hamlin broke an L disc, if I'm not mistaken, and here we have a T5 disc on Eric Almirola. And I've looked at race cars, I've inspected race cars, I've built race cars, I wrecked them, I put them back together with help. And I always wondered why, although the seats, especially in the upper series, the SFI seats, the Randy LaJoie seat that you have to purchase if you're in a modified or up, I always wondered why there wasn't a little more cushioning in these things. And here's why. Here's my thought on this. If you've never sat in a race car, you might not understand what I'm about to say. So here you are, you're in your race car, and it's a 5-point or a 6-point harness over each shoulder, across the lap. And sometimes there's one on the floor up the middle, attaches to everything, or there's two coming up to keep your legs in place. And there you are, you got them all tight, you're online, you're ready to go, and you're going on a racetrack. And somebody, when I first started racing, says, if you think your belts are tight, give them one more tug to make them tighter. And you're down, you're not doing anything. Now here's what happens. You go airborne. The back end's gonna come down. Your body is very flexible. It's gonna come down and it's gonna crunch, and the belts are gonna go with you. And when that crunch happens, the weakest point is gonna break. The weakest point of your body, which is the disc in your spine. There's no cushioning in these seats. There's no spring action even, and think about it, you're driving in a race car, you're bouncing around. I watched coach buses seats, tractor trailer driver seats have this little give to them when you hit a bump. Why can't a seat be on something that takes into consideration that up and downness, or that sudden bang, where all of a sudden you go like that? And you don't rebound right away because the belts are so tight. I don't understand that. Here we have another guy with a broken back because he's in there, and I'm gonna say too tight. There's no flexibility. He's just wedged in. He might as well be nailed, bolted, and tied in with duct tape because you're not moving in the seat. But when you go up, all the stuff inside you just kind of moves. Your spine stretches a little bit, kind of puts you this way, and then bam. Think about that. Think about you have a bunch of charcoal briquettes from your barbecue, and you have them wired together in a column, and you stretch them a little bit and like a slinky, and you let go. I'm thinking one of those briquettes is gonna break. So why can't NASCAR design a seat that doesn't do that? Why can't NASCAR put together something that allows this seat to have a little more move, a little more give? Years ago, the modifieds, they didn't budge. Guys like Richie Evans, Charlie Jazombach, just to name a couple, when they hit these walls, the weakest part in that whole car was their body. Nothing gave, stuff didn't break off. There was no stress points. There was no, when you look at the way the bars were back then, and I say bars that came off the roll cage to the chassis or to the frame, it was made so that it didn't bend. Now they're made so it folds, it collapses, it drops, it breaks off. It absorbs the energy. But in your seat, the only thing that can absorb the energy is the driver. The seat should have something on it that allows it to have a little give. That's the only thing that's left, in my opinion, that NASCAR needs to address on the safety end of this racing. Look, I've been hurt in a race car. It's 21 years. It'll be 21 years in September. I still suffer the ill effects of that. And there's a lot of jokes about the pizza box. That's not what I wrecked in. That injury was because the way the foot box had to be, it had to be a certain way and a certain measurement, and it couldn't go here because why? The engine is in the way. You're running a 105-inch wheelbase. There's not a lot of room. By the time you do your roll cage, set your seat in, mount your pedals, there's not a lot of room. And you got to be able to reach the floor with the gas pedal. So when the floor comes back at you, that's how I got hurt. The engine tilted, came back, hit the pedals, took my foot with it. That's kind of been addressed because now there's bars around it and all kinds of mandated things. But the seat, man, I went up. I didn't go up high, but I went up high enough that when the car came down, the shocks, not only did they rip out of the mounts on the frame, but they also ripped out of the rear end as well. Eric Almirola's car is junk. It's garbage. There's nothing left of it. Especially once you cut the roll cage, throw it away. They had to do that. They put him on a backboard and they made sure his head didn't move because he was in pain. The seat, in my opinion, needs to have a little more give on the bottom end. Yeah, you're all tight, that's good, because like I said a couple of weeks ago, when you go to bash a door in, you don't bash the door in with your ribs and go boom, you bash it in with your shoulder. So they learned, let's not just keep everything in the ribs, because that also on a side impact, you bent over this way and you were breaking these ribs. You were breaking your arm here, dislocating your shoulder. So they put these things here. So now you're in these seats. It's like being in, I'm going to say it again, a cocoon. You're not moving, which is good. But they still haven't addressed up and down. And it needs to be addressed, in my opinion. It just needs to be addressed. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Sometimes somebody has to be injured before somebody takes a look at something. A lot of rules changed over the years because of an injury to a driver. The old thing, everything happens for a reason. Yeah, everything does. Window nets. Richard Petty took that big end-over-end bar roll, and I believe it was at Dover or Darlington, and you watch the replays of that, and his arm's out the window for doing this. And all of a sudden they realize, we got to put a window net up. We got to keep the body parts in because of an injury. That single bar in the windshield, behind the windshield. And I believe they call that the Petty bar because something came through that and injured him. The 7B bar in the modifieds, that extra bar over here. We used to call it in the weekly series the brain bar. That's where your head would hit. And they added a second one because they couldn't take the chance of the bumpers coming through and hitting a guy in the helmet. And they also mounted the bumpers differently to the side nerf bars so that bumper piece, that piece of iron in the shape of an eye couldn't get in. See, the bars, the way they were, it wouldn't allow that to happen. Unfortunately, a driver lost his life before they made that change. But that's something nobody ever thought about. Well, I'm throwing it out there. This seat thing bothers me. And, I'm not one that's going to go back racing Saturday or next Saturday, Saturday after that, or even on a Sunday. Yeah, I'd like to go out and play once in a while. But I always padded the heck out of my seats. And I know in the modified rules, they don't want that. Because, I don't know why. Because anytime I ask that type of question, I got these funny looks like, you're not a perfect wooden soldier. You're not supposed to question. You're supposed to just accept what it is. So, anyway. So, with that being said, Eric Almirola out 8 to 12 weeks. Your cards and letters to Richard Petty Motorsports. This is going to be an 8 to 12 week thing. And his season's pretty much shot. And that pain, you break your back, that pain is there. Like, it might be healed, but it's going to hurt for a long time. Mine still hurts. So anyway, so Reagan Smith drove the 43 this weekend. He was available. I don't think he was the best choice, but on such short notice, you have to get somebody in the car, satisfy the sponsors, get the owner points. Now, the 43 car. The 43 car is one of those cars that you look at the 40, everybody knows it's Richard Petty. Richard Petty, 43, owned by Richard Petty Motorsports. And, I kind of went through this thing and looked at some of the people who drove the 43 car over the years. And we all know Richard Petty drove it, 35 years driving the 43 car. 35 years, from 1959 to 1992. There were some times he drove other things, but he had 1,125 starts in the 43. Little known fact is Lee Petty, his dad, also, who was originally the 42, also drove the 43 in 1959 and 60 to one win, driving that car. And why, I was unable to find out. Maurice Petty had 4 races in the 43 between 1961 and 62. Kyle Petty had 1 start in the 43 in 1981. We all know John Andretti, and a little side note, remember, keep him in your prayers, suffering from colon cancer, and they found it just a little bit too late. But John Andretti, 197 starts in the 43. He filled in 1994, then came back in 1998, and running into 2003, and with 1 win in the 43 car. Bobby Hamilton, 3 full seasons in the 43 car with 2 wins. Bobby Labonte, which I forgot about this, 108 starts in the 43, beginning in 2006, ending in 2008. A.J. Allmendinger, who ran it in 210 and 211. And then Eric Almirola with 191 starts, started in 2012 until now. And Almirola, was the 43rd driver to drive the 43. So now we'll have Reagan Smith. I don't know if it's more than a 1-race deal, but right now he will be in the car at Charlotte. And they'll take it from there. So prayers to Eric Almirola on a speedy recovery, and hopefully that 8 to 12 weeks is a real 8 to 12 weeks, and he's back in the saddle 3 months from now. And we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the ongoings in the Xfinity Series and the Monster Energy Cup Series as well when we come back.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Hey, this is Chris West Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE, your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi, my name is Aaron from Real Big Fish,
And I'm Ed from Real Big Fish.
and you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Welcome back. All right, the Camping World Truck Series was at the Charlotte Motor Speedway Friday evening, with Kyle Busch taking the win there. Johnny Sauter finishing second. Christopher Bell, third from the pole. Ryan Truex, fourth. Timothy Peters, fifth. Matt Craftston, sixth. Grant Enfinger, seventh. Ben Rhodes, eighth. Noah Gregson, ninth. And Parker Klingerman rounding out the top 10. Speaking of the Camping World Truck Series, Red Horse Racing announced this morning they have suspended operations. Driver Timothy Peters reached a championship race in 2016 with the team. Peters has 16 career victories with the team. 30 employees laid off and put out of work. Laying off with them along with Timothy Peters was Brett Moffitt, who also drove a Red Horse Racing truck in the series. Peters is currently 6th in points, while Moffitt is 10th. You gotta wonder how two teams in the top 10 in points are gonna suspend operations. Well, the team has not had a primary sponsor in all 5 Camping World Truck Series events this season. It cost a lot of money to put a team together and to have a full-time staff, 30 employees, there are 2 drivers, and that's 30 full-time employees that operate the team. There's no money coming in. You can't get money out. You can't payroll. And that's part of the deal here. That is definitely part of the deal. And racing's not a cheap business. Junior Johnson said it well once. He goes, do you know the way to end up with $1 million racing? Start with $2 million. At every level, whether you're at the entry level of your weekly track all the way up to the Sprint Cup Series, what you win at the racetrack doesn't cover the expenses of racing the car. Here's a team that has 2 trucks in the top 10 in points and has to fold because there's just not a lot of money out there. Without sponsorship, you're not doing this. And a lot of people, and I'll tell you what, I was blessed when I was racing, and I truly say that. I don't recall too many times that I had to in my own pocket, open up my own wallet, and go racing. I wasn't a championship driver. I wasn't a winning driver. I wasn't even up front battling for wins. But I had good sponsorship all those years, from the time I got my first figure-8 stock car from Clay Walston in 1978 right up to now. Never went in my pocket to go racing. I had good sponsors. I had sponsors who, it's not that they believed in me or believed in my team. They believed in what we did. And I believed in their product or service and promoted their product and service. And one of the deals I had with one of my sponsors who came on board in 1994 up until, I'm gonna say 2012. We had a deal with whatever came into his business, I got a certain percent draw, we'll call it. I don't want to say kickback because that sounds bad, but a certain percent. I'm not going to say what the percentage was. That's a private thing between him and I. But that was my deal. And I received that check in October. So that gave me all winter to buy whatever I needed to go racing the following season. That's what we did. Without sponsorship money, I couldn't go racing. I wasn't the type that was going to sit there and say, all right, I got my electric bill here. I need 8 tires. I can only get one. I'm going to buy the tires and hope I make enough money back to pay this electric bill. A lot of drivers do that. And I'm going to talk to a driver and a car owner, Dick Barney, well-known car owner in the Modified Series, who he would take out a second mortgage on his property to go racing. And what he did is the winnings that he earned from racing or monies from other sponsors, he would take that and pay the note, so to speak. And he always paid that 1 year short-term note off in 10 months. So you got to figure the kind of credit that this guy had, that every year he just did the same thing. That's how he went racing. He didn't go in his pocket to go racing. Like this Red Horse racing team, it's a business. You're a business, you have people to pay, you have insurance, you have rent, you have taxes, you have all this stuff combined. And you're gonna go out and you're gonna buy, a new motor for a couple of $100,000, which could blow up the first race. And the people in the shop that you gotta pay to keep assembling and putting stuff together and fixing stuff, that all comes to a lot of money. So when you look at that, when you take that all into consideration, whether you do it as a hobby or a business, it's gonna cost money. And I used to, I don't wanna say laugh, but I laughed at people, oh, I don't do this for the money. Oh, okay, so why don't you donate your payoff tonight to a charity? You're not here for the money, so you don't care whether you're being paid $50 or $500 or $2,000. If you're not here for the money, no, I can't do that, then you are here for the money. I always thought as a businessman to spend $10,000 to take one was bad business. I never understood that. Why would you do that? Yeah, a guy who has a boat, spending a lot of money in his hobby, a golfer. I'm looking at new golf clubs right now, although that's put on hold because of my foot injury. But, a set of golf clubs, a good set that I was looking at was like $1,500. And, to play around the golf was like $100. And, you have a couple of drinks or some lunch while you're there, another $100. At the end of my golf day, I'm not going out the gate and somebody saying, oh, and here's your pay envelope. It's a hobby. I'm having fun with it. I understand that. A guy who goes hunting, it's his hobby. They got the house upstate in the woods somewhere or out somewhere else, and that they own it. They only use Thanksgiving weekend per se to go hunting. Yeah, that's okay. But you got to approach this racing thing as a business, because the tracks that you're racing at treat it as a business. Most of these places, if not all, give you a 1099 at the end of the year. So that looks like a business to me that you got to pay taxes on. So if you made, we'll take a weekly racing series guy in the mid-range division. If he made, $3,000 racing and he gets a 1099, he just upped his net taxable income $3,000. He's gonna have to pay tax on that, probably around 30%. So you made $3, and it's gonna cost you another, $300-400 to pay the tax. I don't know. Think about it. Think about that. It's one of those things. You're in business to make money. Yeah. Again, I'm gonna go back to the hobby thing. We all do this for fun, but think about this. If you can get a sponsor to cover your expenses, man, you're good to go. Red Horse Racing couldn't find one. We're top caliber drivers. The economy's not what it once was. Money is not as free as it used to be. Write-offs were taken away by the government. Hopefully some of that will change. But here's two competitive trucks in the Camp World Truck Series that are gone. They already don't have full fields. The Monster Energy Cup Series doesn't have a full field at every event. Something's wrong here. Something's wrong. And this is one of the things that NASCAR needs to address, and it looks like they're trying to with the 2018 scheduling changes. Let's shake things up. Let's move stuff around. Because when you do that, you have good results sometimes. And I had an old boss used to say to me, if you always do what you always did, you're always going to get the results you always got. Change it up. Because you could always go back to what you used to do, even though it didn't work, but change it up. Change it up. Go after the non-traditional sponsor. Don't go after the body shop. Don't go after the paint shop. Don't go after the hardware store. Don't go after the parts guy. Change it up. Change it up to the point where you could show that sponsor a return on the investment. And that's one of the problems that Danica Patrick had with her sponsor, Nature's Bakery. They couldn't show them how it was a benefit to them. I know it was. I never heard of that product till Danica was sponsored by them. I never tasted that product until I went to Dover and they were giving the stuff away in the garage area. It's at the end caps of the supermarket where I shop. I would have never gave that a second look. But they didn't know how to show that company the return. And if you can't do that, that's how you lose sponsors. And maybe that's what Red Horse Racing was doing. They were going in there with the same attitude. Sponsor my team, you'll get exposure. As a business owner, I don't want exposure. I do want exposure, but I want a return, the ROI, return on investment. I want that. Yeah, I want the exposure. But how are you going to show me that? How are you going to give me that? How is that going to happen? If I'm going to give you $20 million to go racing at these higher levels, I want to make $30 million. I want to make something. I don't want to break even because then it was a waste of time for me as a businessman. $25 million even. A 20% ROI, that's awesome. Awesome. But a negative ROI? And in some cases, 100% negative? Not good. Not good at all. And that's one of the things that have to be looked at in order to make this sport what it once was years ago. We'll be back.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Rich Willie. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, you get punched in the But if you have this bracelet from Inravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else. Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
Hey, welcome back. All right, let's see. We got this past weekend. The Xfinity Series was off. Their next event will be this weekend at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. This weekend coming up, the biggest racing weekend of the year. You have the Xfinity Series at Charlotte. We have the Monster Energy Drink NASCAR Series at Charlotte for what they call the World 600. Indy is on Monday. Man, you could just sit on the couch and watch racing from 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon up until Monday, early evening. Man, I won't be able to do that. I will be in Georgia celebrating my grandson, Brian, his high school graduation, and something new for me that I went racing. I missed all this stuff when my kids were growing up. I'm not going to miss it with my grandchildren, so I will be celebrating that. And congratulations to my grandson Brian, on his graduation from Evans High School in Georgia. Looking forward to it, and to all the others who will be graduating. I know most graduations here in the Northeast are in June, but congratulations to all of them. All right, so like I said, the Xfinity Series will be in Charlotte Saturday at 1 o'clock, and the Monster Energy Series will be on Sunday with an evening start, which is good. Anyway, some news in that series. Richard Childress Racing announced this morning changes to his crew chief ranks, as Justin Alexander will replace Richard Slugger Lab with the 3 car driven by Austin Dillon. Alexander moves from Richard Childress Racing's number 2 Xfinity team. Randall Burnett, who came from JTG Doherty Racing, will replace Alexander with the Xfinity team. Burnett was replaced by Ernie Cope at JTG's number 47, driven by AJ Allmendinger. Lab, who spent 6 years at Richard Childress Racing, is leaving to pursue other opportunities. Good luck. I mean that. That's what they say when they're done with you. They just make a press release. The Kansas race was Lab's 500th race as a crew chief in the Cup Series, and I'm wondering if his departure in 500 races had something to do, let's make it happen. We'll give you your 500th race. Let's shake hands, wish you well, and sayonara. And I'll tell you what, Slugger Lab he knew his stuff. He knew his stuff. But, things change, people move, people do things, and I wish him the best. I had the opportunity to meet him on one occasion. Man's a gentleman. Speaking of a gentleman, Dale Earnhardt Jr., I didn't know this. He collects wrecked race cars. True story. He recently acquired Danica Patrick's number 10, which was wrecked at Kansas, along with Joey Logano's car and Eric Almirola's car. He keeps these cars in the woods on his property at what he calls Dirty Mo Acres. Dirty Mo Acres. And what he does, he just puts them in there, just throws them in there. He says he doesn't even pay for them. There's a bad wreck, car's destroyed. Instead of just cutting it up and throwing it away, he calls those teams and says, "Can I have that car?" And they say, "Sure." And he comes and gets it, and he puts it in the woods. Wow. He doesn't strip them for parts. He just has a flatbed go get them and puts them out there. And I'm sure there's a future plan. Maybe make it part of a park where people go look and see a wrecked race car. I don't know, but I think that's great. I really do. I really do. He's making it happen with old race cars. Everybody has their things. Anyway, the Monster Energy NASCAR All-Star Race was held at the Charlotte Motor Speedway this past weekend. Kyle Busch swept both ends, winning the truck race and the Cup race, and pocketing a cool $1 million for winning that event. Kyle Larson was second, Jimmy Johnson third, Kurt Busch was fourth, Jamie McMurray fifth, followed by Kevin Harvick in sixth, Chase Elliott seventh, Joey Logano eighth, Brad Keselowski ninth, and Denny Hamlin rounding out the top 10. This is a bragging rights race, folks. There's no points. It's like the All-Star game in baseball. the Pro Bowl in football, the All-Star game in hockey. It's you take your best of your best and you go racing. And it's a winner-take-all type of thing. And Kyle Busch pockets $1 million. Imagine that. I'd be happy to make like $1,000 racing, winning a race, but $1 million. And I wonder what that check looks like when it comes from the NASCAR prize fund. Does it like just say $1 million, with all those zeros, and is the 1099 that goes to at the end of the year? How does that work? Well, it doesn't, because let me explain how that works. Although the driver is credited with the earnings, most of these drivers are on salary and get a percentage or a piece of the action. A piece. They get so much percent for a win, so much percent for a top 5, maybe something for the top 10, and that's it. They're on salary. That money goes back to the owner. And I know when I was negotiating with Wade Cole and whatnot to drive the tour mod a couple of years back, I can remember one of the forms I had to fill out was an owner's release that I had to sign that the money went to the owner, that Wade Cole Racing got the payoff if there was going to be any. And that was the deal I got. And my payoff was I got use of the car and the motor and trailer and the truck. And I had to put in tires. It was a good deal, I thought. It was an excellent deal. Man, you couldn't run your own thing for that, as Johnny Bush, Long Island modified driver, learned when he drove the car a couple of times. He goes, wow, I can't do my own deal for that, but that's just how it works. It's all good, all good. So this weekend, biggest weekend of racing. Biggest weekend of racing. I'll tell you what, I don't normally talk about upcoming events in the weekly series unless they have a special meaning to me. And this Saturday here on Long Island, there's a special race going on. It's called the Islip 300. It will be held at the Riverhead Raceway. And I'll tell you what, although I'm going down to Georgia for my grandson's graduation, I would have loved to see that race. Modifieds, tour-type modifieds from all over the East Coast and if not further west. I'm going to come try to qualify and race this what's being called the Islip 300. 28 cars to start, $7,000 to win. $7,000 to win. That's more than a tour race pays that goes to Riverhead on Long Island here. In fact, if you won both tour races at Riverhead, you wouldn't make in payoff $7,000. You'd make around $5,000. I'm not counting the lap money that people collect or the extra bonuses that certain people put together for the teams. I'm talking about the check that comes from the racetrack or from NASCAR. $7,000 to win the Islip 300 Riverhead Raceway this Saturday night. And like I said, I don't normally promote those kind of things and talk about those because that's like a free commercial. But you know what? That race, some reason, means a lot to me. I'm not going to see it. I'm sure I'll catch video of it. But Eddie Partridge and his wife Connie, along with Tom Gatz and General Manager John Elwood, they promised when Eddie, Connie, and Tom took that place over and bought that place from the past owners, they were going to make changes. And that first winter, when I went out to that racetrack for the flea market and got a tour of the facility and the changes they made then they only had the place a couple of months. I was like, wow, this guy's, he's walking the talk here. He's going to do this stuff. And he made some changes in rules, and he made some changes in divisions. And as much as people were upset that the Charger division is gone, think about it. A Charger and a late model, they look the same to the casual fan. And I'm going to share a quick story about that. And 3M came on board to sponsor the late model series at the weekly racetracks across the country. I was given 3M stickers by the promoters at the time and track owners. To put every late model had to have a 3M sticker on their cars in a specific spot in order to be eligible for the 3M money. I was handed the stickers, put them in my folder, and when the late models show up to race, we'll do that. A few hours later, I get called in over the radio to report to the owner's office. They want to know why they just went through the pits and not one late model had a sticker on it. I said, when did you do this? Today. It's the owners. The late models aren't here today. Those are Charger cars. The late models were here last week and they all have stickers. Might want to check them when they're here again in 2 weeks. And they looked at each other and they laughed, yeah, we knew. They didn't know. They owned the place, they didn't know. So how is the fan who's sitting in the stands going to know the difference? Yeah, the announcer's going to announce it and, and people are going to say stuff, but they didn't know. So when Eddie and Connie took this place over, they said they were going to make changes. They did. And they made schedule changes, they made divisional changes, they made changes in the way the place is run, and I wish them well. And I wish this race, the ISUP 300, this Saturday at Red Raceway, is one of the best modified races that we've had in Long Island in a long time, because we're going to bring modified racing back to Long Island the way it was in the 60s and the 70s when I was a kid growing up. And that's it for today. I said a lot of stuff today. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for chiming in tonight and for watching our show and taking time out of your busy schedule. This weekend, busiest race weekend of the year, no matter what you like. Weekly, Cup, Indy, whatever it is, it's this weekend. Enjoy it. Be safe. Tell somebody you love them. Give them a hug. God bless you all. And we will not be here next Monday for Memorial Day. We will be in Georgia with my family. But we'll be back the Monday after. Have a good night, everybody. See you then.
Inravio.com.